So we're going to cover primarily the material that will be part of the exam. So make sure you bring your Scantron. There will be some true or false questions, some multiple choice questions, and a couple written problems for you to resolve. Here's the material that we're going to use to cover on the test. So all the basic material for CS1A, input, output, arithmetic, selection, repetition, functions we review, a couple of new things we discuss, user-defined heads, some special data types like enumerator data type, strings, arrays, search and sort, struct, and testing, which we have complete not long ago. Let's start reviewing the material, some of the basic concepts. Is that true or false? A C++ identifier may not begin with a digit or underscore. Is that true or false? Yeah, there is true. We always have to start with a letter. What is a literal constant? So what that indicates for us, what it has. So a literal constant is an actual value. Anything that includes a value. It could be a character, it could be a string, it could be a number. So, but when you have a literal constant, it's like the numbers or the values you added on your program, constants you add. What type of loop should be used for a program segment that should sum a list of positive integers? So we're going to add positive integers, but it's unknown how many inputs the user will provide. So we're going to read from the console, the user entered that. So what is the best loop we'll use? That is right, we're going to use a while loop. So for that particular while loop, what should be the loop control variable? The one that manages that when we stop that. Right, we use the input number, that positive number. And how do we stop that? What is the sentinel value that we use? Well, logically, if we're looking at positive numbers, yes, you're right. We're going to have a negative input to stop. So we'll say time -1 to stop the input process. Okay, let's talk about how we initialize the loop control variable for each type of loop. How many loops do we have? Correct, we have 3 loops. Let's go over them. While loop, we'll do that before the loop starts, before we enter on the loop, because we do that check right on the top. Do while loop, we do that at the top of the loop once we enter the loop, because the check is done on the bottom of the loop. And of course, for the for loop, the loop statement is the one that has the check in there. How about when we update the loop control variable? Okay, again, for a while loop, at the end of the loop, before we go back up to the top to test it. On the do while loop, we do at the top of the loop again, because the test is done on the bottom. And on the for loop, again, goes on the loop statement. Okay, let's talk about some concepts on the output. So what does symbols mean? The 2 arrows pointed to the left. Correct, that's an insertion operator. So we're going to insert some data in a stream device. So what can be on the left side of the insertion operator? Where do we insert that? Right, any string device, for example, in the file, in the cout, for example. What can be on the right side of the insertion operator? I mean, where do we take the value? We can take the value from an expression, from a variable, from a constant, from anything that generates a output value. Which manipulators should we use to output in columns? So we want to make sure our output has separate columns with exact size. So we're making look like a spreadsheet, for example. So yes, correct, we use the set W to define the number of space that we use to output the different variables. So what are the escape sequence that we have? Right, those were the one you use inside on the output stream to be able to control things like end of the line, tabulation. So here are some of the more common ones we use it. Which output manipulators would we use to form floating point numbers? Do you remember how many we had? Correct, we had 3 that we use. Fix, set precision, and show point. Do you remember what they do? Yeah, let's talk about that. So set precision defines the number of digits that will show our floating point number. So the n is that. What is the default for set precision? Correct, 6. If we use set precision together with fix, that number, the n digits there, we're going to become the number of digits for the decimal point part of the number. And then the last one, show point, indicates, force it to show the decimal point even though it's just be 0. So all numbers will show the decimal portion of it. Also make sure you know how to work them together. We talk about the set precision fix. There are a couple other combinations we discussed. Let's now talk about input. So what we have here, what is this symbol shows is a couple arrows pointing to the right. Correct, that is an extraction operator. We're going to extract data from a string device. Okay, what can appear on the left side of that? Where we're extracting from, right? Any string device, for example, console input or a file. Again, what can appear on the right side of the expression? So we're going to insert that information and put somewhere that we can store information. Correct, we can only store in variables, so there has to be a variable. When do we use a .ignore when reading say strings or string? So .ignore is used to clean up the buffer call, and then there is some sequences where some of the operators will leave information on the buffer that needs to be cleaned. So here's what we do. In between extract operator and a get line or a .get. So if we get one character or get a line, we needed to clean the buffer if we had an extraction done prior. Or if we have a get line after a .get, we also need to clean the buffer. What functions do we use to get a line of characters and place in a string? Right, we use a get line, and then we define which input device we're using, a file variable there, or from the console input, and then the string name that we're putting the data in. Is that true or false? Seeing always redirect in from the keyboard. Correct, this is false. We will read that from the buffer. So once you type on the keyboard, hit enter, that goes to the buffer, and then we'll read from the buffer. Okay, let's talk about arithmetic operations in C++. Here's some examples. What's the difference between type coercion and typecasting? So type coercion, typecasting has to do with mixed mode operations. One is done by the compile, implicit, the other one is explicit, done by the programmer. So coercion is implicit, casting is explicit. Let's take a look, see at some examples. So like I said, type coercion is when the type is converted implicitly through the use of mixed mode arithmetic. So you can see here on the example that we have a number there there's a mixed mode operation 5 times 3 divided by 2.0, so there's a floating point. This whole thing will be converted to a floating point operation. And then in typecasting is done explicit. You see that we have a float for the 2, so the 2 will be converted to a floating point before the operation happened there. So look at the expression there, how we evaluate the expression. So the parenthesis is a higher precedence. We will do in 2 equal 5 would be the first that we're going to evaluate. And remember, here the in 1, in 2 are integers, f and 2 is a floating point number. So in 2 it will be equal to 5, then we multiply that by the result of 4 divided by 8.0. So this is a mixed mode operation, the result will be a float. So 4 divided by 8.0 is 0.5. 5 times 0.5, and this is a floating point operation, it would be 2.5. So f and 3 will be equal to 2.5. Then we'll multiply by 2, that's 5.0, and make that equal to in 1, but in 1 is a integer, so we'll truncate that number. So it will be 5. So here's the answer, 5, in 1, 5, in 2, 5, and f and 3, 2.5. Okay, we want to rewrite the expression described here using combine operator. So we want to get the remainder, which is the mod of n1, divide by n2 times 12, and then store back in n1. So it'll be n1, it would be equal to n1 mod of n2 times 12. So if we combine that, that's what we get, n1 mod equal n2 times 12. Also make sure you review Boolean operators, which how we look at logic to determine something is true or false. We have the AND, the OR operators, and the NOT, and also condition operators that we discuss. So that's a few other concepts in arithmetic. What is the order of precedence for the operations? So there's a long table that we review. I'll show here just to remind you. So it's important to remember that the standard priorities, their parentheses, the top one. We have increment operators that if they are done prior to the operation, they will be priority. Then you have negation, not. Then you have multiplication, division, mod, addition, subtraction. Then there's combination, other comparison operators, or they're larger, equal. Then you have the AND, the OR operation, and so on. Combined operator would be the lower precedence of all. So let's look at here a statement to be evaluated. So we have A equal to 4, B equal to 3, and we want to calculate C. You can see that A is decrement pre-operation. So in the expression, we're going to decrement A before we use it. So A is going to be equal to 3, but the multiplication will be higher precedence. So 10 times B. B is going to increment after the operation. B is 3. So 10 times 3 is 30. A was decrement. A is 3, so 33. And A was decrement to 3, and B is going to be 4. So as a result, we have A equal 3, B equal to 4, and C equal to 33.